Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in to the McConnell Center's series this year, Why You Should Read. Tonight we're going to be talking about the Kentucky author Harlan Hubbard, why you should read his work. Tonight we have the privilege of having one of the McConnell Scholars' favorites over the years with us, Ronald Reggie Van Stockum, Jr. He is, I would say all the things that he is, but you imagine... maybe imagine just me saying the couple of things that he's not. But he's everything from a lawyer, and a biologist, a writer, an actor, a playwright, a director, a guitarist, a vocalist. If you want to know the intricacies of the sex life of freshwater mussels, he's got the lecture 3-4 hours on that. It's really incredible. He lives on his family farm in Shelbyville, Kentucky. He's a graduate of Santa Clara University and the University of Louisville and the University of Louisville Law School. He's authored more than 30 titles in genres from science fiction to travel guides around, history guides around Kentucky. His latest is Surroundings, Fort Knox, including southern Indiana, and most particularly connected with the work that he's going to talk about tonight, the author is going to talk about tonight. He's also authored Surrounding the Kentucky River from the beginning to its end. I hope that's not a apocalyptic kind of title there, but you just mean literally from the beginning to end. He has an amazing breadth of knowledge, as you will see tonight, and you'll also come to understand tonight why he is a favorite of the McConnell Scholars. And he's here tonight to help us understand why we need to read the great Kentucky author, Harlan Hubbard. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Reggie Van Stockum.
Thank you, Dr. Gregg. There's one thing that I missed along the way that I wished I could claim. Something that you already possess, being a McConnell Scholar. Congratulations. It's a big deal. In my world, it's the cat's meow. Future leaders of America, people that care, you got it going on, and I love speaking with you all. First, a short essay to establish a structure for further discussion. Harlan and Anna Hubbard, A Shanty Boat and Payne Hollow. Thoughtful philosophers hide in our Commonwealth, leaders that learn to live within the ancient rock womb that is Kentucky, exploring the meaningfully possible interactions between humanity and nature. Some live alone, some live together. Thomas Merton, Wendell Berry, Janice Holt Giles, and Jesse Stewart, Anne and Harry Caudle. They settled into a spot and wrote from the heart, being supported on a shape of topography that spread out before them like a classroom. Boulders for desks, tall trees for pencils, and the papyrus upon which they wrote, their imagination. Itself, like yours, a crenulated landscape of mysteries hidden within the creeks and rivers of your thinking. Harlan and Anna Hubbard lived in a Kentucky kingdom. They lived alone and they lived together. They lived on the water and they lived on the land. And before they settled into Payne Hollow off the Ohio River in Trimble County, Kentucky, they did what we have all dreamt of doing. They built a shanty boat and they floated down the river to New Orleans. Abraham Lincoln had done it, so had his father. But Harlan Hubbard had the unique ability to put meaningful words, poetry really, to the art he was seeing, sketching, and painting in the fluidly changing landscapes. And it was around Anna that he could finally build his boat and then build a home. Kentucky is still a frontier, and these two, the most civilized of frontiersmen. This is their story. And here are books by and about Anna and Harlan's journeys. These books, too, are like a river, and your imagination like a shanty boat, floating over their pages. And within certain chapters, you might even stay over for the summer, as they did in Payne Hollow, planting your thoughts and growing them up until they would be harvested like potatoes and stored for the next voyage in your journey. What does it mean to be alone? But with another. Harlan Hubbard was living with his mother, and 41 years old when he began to seriously see Anna Wonder Eichenhout, the 38-year-old Cincinnati librarian from Grand Rapids in Michigan. She had been through college. He had not. She had been trained in the French language and could teach it. And that figures on in this story. 2 years later, they were married as his mother was dying. It would be the only marriage for each of them, and there would be no children. It would last until her death in 1986 and his in 1988. And 1 year after their marriage, Anna told Harlan to get on with it. Build that dreamy shanty boat on the shoreline below the railroad tracks at Brent, Kentucky, just upstream from Cincinnati. And then she moved in with him in that shanty boat on the shore below the railroad in Brent, Kentucky. 2 years after that, they pushed off into history and entered the current. Without Anna, it does not happen. Without Anna, Harlan does not find his meaning. Here is a quote from the author of a fabulous new biography of Anna and Harlan Hubbard, a book called Driftwood by Jessica Whitehead. Here's what she says. Harlan Hubbard, a man who was so uncertain and unfulfilled for the first half of his life, lived out the second half in an ecstatic, if largely unwitnessed, blaze of vision and fulfillment. The study of Harlan Hubbard is really the study of a family, and his family's struggles quickly bring forth memories of our own, even if filled with love and wonder. We do not, perhaps, put enough stock in those relationships, for we are more than just ourselves. We are part of those who made us. It is easy to see Harlan Hubbard as the Thoreauvian naturalist who has found his way back to his own Walden Pond. He was much more, and his journey much more interesting. Let us begin at his beginning. William Harlan Hubbard was born on January 4th, 1900 in Bellevue, Kentucky, across the river from Cincinnati. His father, Frank Gilbert Hubbard, a salesman, tinkerer, a house builder, died in the spring of 1907 when Harlan himself was only 7. Harlan was left to the care of his mother, Rose Ann Swingle. and his two older brothers, Frank Lafayette Hubbard and Lucian Swingle Hubbard, each about 12 years his senior. And those true brothers would help support the family and direct the path of their younger brother. And in return, until her death in November 16th of 1943, at age 83, Harlan would remain with their mother. This is a family story. Harlan was astute as a student and early on demonstrated a native ability as a sketch artist. He would be described as precocious. His elder brother Frank found success as a commercial artist in New York City. He created the character Gus Wilson in Popular Science. And Lucian, he became a famous playwright, a director, and a producer in Hollywood. The first Oscar ever handed out by the Academy Awards was handed out for a film produced by Harlan Hubbard, Wings, a silent film in 1929. However these things happen, Harlan Hubbard had obviously received his many talents honestly. How do you approach a man and a woman who don't care to be located? They explored what it means to be human and living, slowing down and stepping within the nooks and crannies of being, then expressing their emotional joy of experience in music, natural feuds, books, journals, sketches, paintings, and woodblocks. So how to begin to explore the treasure chest of experience? You know how. You open the lid and look in. And here is how you do it. You read the books by and about Harlan Hubbard, but also about his wife, Anna. When you read those books, beware of your trajectory, because I think many of you will be reading these books. Harlan Hubbard's interests were kaleidoscopic. And when you look at his woodcuts and when you look at his watercolors, you will see a man whose spirit is free. Not from the Hudson School of Landscape, not from the Regional School of Landscape, and not a modernist. A free soul. And you may follow him in his journeys. And you may feel the same joy he felt by being free. Here is my collection of books, but here a timeline is helpful. In 1944, they both began living on that shanty boat at Brent. In 1946, they push off into the river and they start floating down. They didn't sail and didn't have a motor. They just kind of directed themselves according to the current. In spring of 1947, they arrived at Payne's Landing in Trimble County on the Ohio River. Payne's Landing. That's Payne's Hollow. They spent the summer there. They just pulled up on the bank. They got permission to grow a garden, and they just lived alone on their shanty boat with their garden. And they were happy. The second summer, they were down on Bizzle's Bluff, up the Cumberland River in the western part of the state, near Burma. The third summer, they were down near Natchez on Bisland Bayou. That was 1949. In 1950, they locked into the New Orleans harbor at Harvey. By May of 1950, they were spending their fourth summer in the shanty boat on the bayous of the Intercoastal Waterway. Harlan bought a 5-horsepower engine, and he would use that to pull the shanty boat through the intercoastal waterways. Before that, when he was in the locks through the dams on the Ohio River, he would pull the shanty boat with his John boat, and he would row his shanty boat through. June of 1951, they reached Del Cambra, and he sold the shanty boat for $700. Immediately bought a Dodge, built a wagon to pull behind it, and they headed west. Now, why were they headed west? Because Harlan Hubbard had been writing all that time alone in the shanty boat with his wonderful companion, his wife Anna, floating down the river, painting, sketching, and writing. Think about that. Every turn, a new landscape. Every weather, a new emotion. And he thought to himself, maybe I could publish a book about river journeys. He wanted to call it Driftwood. And he wanted to show it to Lucian, his brother. I mean, Lucian was a top dog in Hollywood, right? So if you're going to show it to somebody, he's a good guy to show it to, maybe to make a movie out of it, right? Well, Lucian was very supportive, although Harlan wasn't particularly happy out there in Beverly Hills. He got back later that year, crossing the Brandenburg Ferry in good old Kentucky and Indiana. And by late 1953, he had submitted his book to a major publisher in New York City, and they accepted it. That book was called Shanty Boat. Now, shanty boat are just two words. A shanty is simply a bum's cabin. A boat, you know what that is. You put the two together, and you have a home. And that's what Shanty Boat was. Shanty Boat was successful enough that he was able to make some decisions. And I can imagine Harlan Hubbard talking to his wife, Anna. Dear, you know, I think we can write some more. And I could just see Anna looking to Harlan and saying, what for? Aren't we happy? Don't we have everything that we want? Can't we make and grow everything that we need? I imagine that discussion. But that's what happened. He wrote, but he never left her nor left the feeling that the shanty boat living gave him. So they went back to Payne's Landing, to Payne Hollow, and they bought 7 acres. And they started building out of driftwood and rock a cabin for themselves. And why not? Why wouldn't they build a cabin? They lived in a cabin. Why not build a cabin from driftwood on the Ohio River in Payne Hollow, from rocks that they could cobble from the cliffs? And when you go to Payne Hollow, and you will go to Payne Hollow, when you go to Payne Hollow, and you will go to Payne Hollow, and you walk down that long 3/4 of a mile cliff to get down to that cabin, you're going to be thinking to yourself, I kind of get it. I kind of get it. And then when you see his cabin and his work barn, you're going to say to yourself, I could do that. I could do that. And so they did. That was in 1954. They lived down there until Anna died in 86. Harlan died in 88. You will not find this kind of life anywhere else in America. You won't find this kind of living anywhere else in America. And you won't find this kind of loving except in this kind of environment. Now, here's some good news. When Harlan died in '88, his memory kind of languished. It's what happens to all of us. We're a big deal while we're still standing, right? But he had been incredibly productive, and there were people that loved him and that collected his artwork and his writings, and they kept that memory alive. And fortunately, Payne Hollow itself was saved. It was saved by a group recently formed, the Payne Hollow on the River.org. Now, these are some beautiful people, and you'll meet some of them, but their names bear repeating. David Wicks, Joe Wolek, and the incredibly productive Ted Steinbach. When they got down there to the cabin, the drawers were full of paintings, things stuck in nooks and crannies. And they opened the lid on that treasure chest, and they started looking at the kaleidoscopic journey that Harlan Hubbard had taken. And they saved it. They saved it for us. They saved it for us. You, I think, will have the opportunity to go down there because Dr. Gregg is a believer. And those are precious people. And until you get there, you can go to my blog site, vanstockum.blog, put in the word Hubbard to search, and you'll see 2 videos of what you'll see when you get down there. You won't see enough of it, but you'll be enough to want another taste of that ice cream. And that now brings us to this absolutely delightful moment in time. There is a new biography out of Harlan Hubbard. It's called Driftwood, and it's by Jessica K. Whitehead. This is a good book. It's just out this week. You're gonna hear a buzz about this. You're gonna see it in social media. You're gonna see it in the newspaper. Jessica did a terrific job. And it's one thing for a historian to go back and simply say, born here, died there, here's what happened in between. But as I read this, as a writer, I realize that Jessica also immersed herself in the emotional journey that these 2 lovers took. And she asked the questions of what it was like. This is a terrific book. Driftwood, The Life of Harlan Hubbard, Jessica K. Whitehead. Now, books. Let's talk about some books. We'll try to do them in order, and that will make some sense. Shantyboat was the first one. Right there, here's the hardback. Shantyboat, right? An artist and his wife find contentment and simple living drifting down the Mississippi. Harlan Hubbard. Harlan Hubbard, Shantyboat, A River Way of Life, with a foreword by Wendell Berry. Payne Hollow. Yes, Payne Hollow. Life on the Fringe of Society. Payne Hollow. Life on the fringe of society. Oyo, an Ohio River anthology. Oyo, try to find one of these. Try to find one of these. Oyo was a Native American name for the Ohio River. And this is one of his woodcuts up here. Man, these are worth reading. Wendell Berry's in here, Harlan's in here. Whoa, giants come together. Don Wallace was the editor, River Art by Harlan Hubbard. You're going to see Wallace's name again. Wow. Oyo. Harlan Hubbard and the River. A Visionary Life by Don Wallace. Harlan Hubbard, Life and Works. Come on up here, Luke. Come on. I can't read upside down. I need your help. Harlan Hubbard, Life and Works. Do I have it? Ah, yes, you should be well known. No, don't go away. Now, what makes this of interest? This fine book? It's by Wendell Berry. Now, Wendell Berry is a giant himself and more large in love and perspective outside of Kentucky. In Kentucky, we think of him as just one of us. Yikes. He thought that Harlan Hubbard had it going on. And the more he looked at Harlan Hubbard, the more he realized how much more Harlan Hubbard was doing and had done. He encountered them paddling down the Kentucky River and up the Ohio River and looking in at Payne Hollow saying, oh, well, no, who's that? Who's building that cabin up there, right? The Woodcuts of Harlan Hubbard. Would you hold that open for us? Come over here, Luke. Yeah, kind of show them around. These are the woodcuts of Harlan Hubbard. This is Bill Cadell's collection. Now, woodcut's an interesting thing. Now, you might ask yourself, well, where are the famous portraits? Where's the Mona Lisa? Harlan Hubbard was a landscape artist. He could do figures, but he didn't do them very often. He did these kinds of landscapes. So the woodcuts of Harlan Hubbard. It's up to you to decide who gets that book. Shanty Boat Journal. So it turns out that Harlan Hubbard was a journalist. And if you want to get into the mind of this beautiful soul, read his journals. I'm going to read you some quotes out of them as we end our session. The Shanty Boat Journal, again, edited by Don Wallace. Wow. Let's see. No, you've got one. All right. Payne Hollow Journal. Yes, the Payne Hollow Journal. I cannot tell you, if you guys are going to get into Harlan Hubbard, right, this is the book, Driftwood. This is the book to do it, and it'll really be worth your while. But if you want to get into his spirit, into the emotionality of his living. Take a look at some of these journals. Anna Hubbard, Out of the Shadows. Now, this one is, thank you very much. This one is worth chatting about. So often we have couples. One of them is a giant, and you don't hear much about the other. Until you start doing some research. Until you start realizing that the one stood on the shoulders of the other. John C. Fremont, the famous pathfinder of the West, the manly man. His best-selling books, written by his wife. Anna Hubbard. Anne and Harry Caudle, the great writer of the mountains of eastern Kentucky. Anna Hubbard and his wife, Anne Caudle. Without Anna, Harlan doesn't build his boat. Without Anna, Harlan doesn't float down that Mississippi River. And without Anna, Harlan is not free. This book is a biography of Anna. This is a biography of Anna. So if you're encouraged to take a book and take a look, and you're interested in what goes on beyond the curtain that houses Oz, take a look at this book. Mia Cunningham, a French scholar, could speak French and did to Anna Hubbard, a longtime friend, and then they had something of a mysterious falling out. But this woman needed to be written about, and Mia Cunningham did it. That book is a gem. The watercolors of Harlan Hubbard. Here we go. Would you open those out? Show everybody. You hear a lot about his watercolors for a lot of good reason. But for those of you who are art historians or artists yourself, when you look at the different styles of his watercolors, you'll realize that there's a man that was unbound. Here was a man that was not going to conform. He was going to draw what he saw as he felt about it. Pretty interesting stuff. Thank you, Luke. Now, we have some new items. There's a Flora of Payne Hollow being done by Deb White. It's in progress. She is a well-known and well-thought-of botanist in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. A floristic inventory. For those of you who like plants, and I do, what Deb does is going to be the best. Payne Hollow on the Ohio River, a natural and cultural landscape inventory. You leaf through that, you'll see the future of study. And I'm very pleased to show you this. This is from Payne Hollow on the Ohio.org, and this is their strategic plan 2025-2027. We in Kentucky are going to look back upon the good work done by these people. and recognize that they saved for us Kentuckians a world-class cultural history. Let me finish with some quotes. And Jessica Whitehead does such a super job at looking at all of the different sources to pull out this relevant speech, in many cases from the journals of Harlan Hubbard. This is Harlan Hubbard speaking. There is but one great man. That is he who makes a masterpiece of his life. No accomplishment can offset bad living. And another. Now, I must break forth from my old self, cast away old traditions, unbind my eyes so that I may have a broader vision of truth, so that I may come to this river as I do today and not find it cluttered with emotions and thoughts of former days, or its shores lined with the drift of cities. In the 1920s, he went to his mother's family reunion. These are the Swingles. There was a Swingle branch through his mother and a Hubbard branch through his father. His father died when he was young. His mother lived to be 83. Here's what he said about the Swingles. They are a clannish folk, good citizens, responsible in family and business matters, honest and industrious. Admirable traits that can be carried to extremes, producing an individual who is too conservative and cautious, inclined to overrate bigness, progress, and fame, intolerant of people whose standards are based on other values. Harlan again. I was never lonely. Rather, I enjoyed the solitude, the feeling of being self-contained, observing the world about me, but taking no part in it. My imagination was lively. The pictures which I paint must be out of doors, not in the mind, but of the eye and the heart. I will forget the traditions of art, forget I am an artist. That will take care of itself. He was a talented man, and he wrote poetry. Here is one of them, his poems. No man knows me. Before all I wear a mask. Sometimes it looks almost like me, often a grinning effigy. But always behind it I writhe in torment, for the mask fits them, not me. And now to Anna. I have never met a woman with whom I could live without giving up ideals which I have always considered more than life itself. I wanted to go live in the woods and didn't care about earning money, didn't like the city, and didn't want to have a steady job. And couldn't stand it. Anna was a wonderful accompanist. It was her strongest point, really. She never lost her place. And she never lost me. And I end the evening on this quote. The first 43 years of my life were spent under my mother's domination. And the next 43 years of my life under my wife's, Anna. I hope you enjoy your journey. Thank you.